a cake decorating tutorial. So again, we're going to use our chocolate batter that we use for our donuts and our mini cupcakes. And today we're going to be making an Easter themed cake. Now you might not have all of these ingredients at home, or you might not be able to, make stuff out of fondant. That's okay. Because I'm still going to teach you how to stack a cake, fill a cake, get nice straight edges, and then you can decorate it however you want, or you can keep watching along. You can learn how to make a fondant bunny, and you can see how cute our little Easter cake comes out. I'm going to start working on my bunny because I want it to dry before I add it to the board of the cake. Today I'm going to be using satinized gum paste. It's my favorite one to use because it does dry very hard and it does dry a lot more quickly than fondant. You can make this bunny in fondant, but there's a chance that it will start to sink and wilt in certain areas, which is the exact reason that we're going to use gum paste and the reason that we're making it ahead of time, so it does have time to dry and set. Now for the body, I'm just going to be rolling out my gum paste into my hands, warming it up, and trying to get rid of any seams that I see. Once all of that is nice and warm, I'm going to roll it into a ball and then roll that ball into more of an oval shape. I'm going to pinch one end of the oval, so one is a little bit chubbier than the other, and then I'm just going to pinch around the top of the thinner end to create a neck for our bunny. We are going to be making this body a little bit longer and a little bit taller than we actually want it to be, because even though we're using gum paste, it will still sink and wilt a little bit as it's drying, unless you prop it up really well with foam, that kind of thing. But because I know that it's going to sink, we're just going to make it a little longer. I'm also adding a toothpick into the area we made as our neck. This will allow us to add the head tomorrow once this is all finished and dried. I'm just going to prop up the body onto a styrofoam cake dummy so it can set, but you can just leave this on whatever mat or clean area you're working with. Once your body has had time to dry overnight, you can start to work on the legs and arms. So I'm just going to roll out a long oval of our gum paste. Again, I've already warmed it up and kneaded it. I'm going to roll it out into a long oval and cut it into 4 segments, 2 large segments and 2 small segments. Now for your large segments, you're going to take one at a time and roll it into a longer oval, pinching one end. Not right at the end, but just before it so you can create a little foot. The other end we're going to leave wide because that's going to be the thigh. We're going to repeat all of those same steps on our other large oval of gum paste that we already have. And now the reason we cut this from the same piece is because we want each leg to be even. We want them to be the same length and size. So again, we're just going to pinch one end so we can create a foot and leave the other end wide to create a thigh. Now when attaching these to the body, I'm simply going to use a water pen. Now if you don't have a water pen at home, that's no problem at all. You can use a paintbrush with a little bit of water on it, or if you don't have a paintbrush, you can simply dip your finger into some water and tap that onto each leg. You can also attach your legs or arms using royal icing or a gum glue, but the easiest thing that we can use is water, and because we don't need it to stick onto the side of a cake or something that's going to be vertical, water will do just fine. Before I attach the arms of my bunny, I'm going to create little pads for his feet and his belly. I've decided to use pink, but you can really use whatever color you want. A lot of times I see people using gold, which is also a really pretty technique, but today we're going nice and simple and just keeping it pink. I'm going to cut 2 small circles out of the pink, and these are going to be for the pads of the feet. I'm just going to stretch them out a little bit so that they match more of the shape of each foot, and then attach them again with my water pen, but if you don't have one, you can use whatever kind of paintbrush or your finger, whatever it takes to get the water between the fondant and the other fondant. But I do want to say you don't want to put too much so it's sliding around. Just getting it damp will allow it to stick, especially with pieces like the belly and the pads of the feet because they are so thin and light. For the belly, I'm going to use a much larger oval cutter. If you don't have a cutter, it's no problem at all. You can cut this using a sharp knife into a rough shape, and then you can form it once it gets right onto the body. You're just going to adhere it, push it on, and then buff out the edges with your fingers so that it all looks adhesed and it looks like one piece rather than a bunch of pieces stuck together. I'm just going to take my X-Acto knife and cut 2 small slits into each foot, and then just wiggle it around to make a little gap. These are going to form the toes of our bunny. As long as you have any sharp knife, it should work. And still at this point, our legs are soft, so you can adjust them and put them in any position you want. I've decided to leave one kind of laying to the side because our bunny is going to be eating our cakes. We want him to look itis-y, like he just ate way too much and now he's passed out. The same way we created our legs is how we're going to make our arms, just rolling tubes of our gum paste And this time they're going to be much smaller because they're arms, not legs. And we're going to make sure that we leave a little ball on the end of each arm. We're going to flatten that out and make that into the paws for the bunny. Now we're doing the same thing on each side because we want it to match. And for the little round part that we left at the bottom, we're just going to use an X-Acto knife or your sharp knife, and we're going to make little cuts, and those are going to be our bunny's paws. Once everything is cut and you have two little hands, you can attach them to your body however you want. Now again, because our bunny is going to be kind of itis-y, like he just ate our cake, we do want to make one arm maybe on his belly and the other one kind of flop to the side. The next part that we're going to be working on is the head, and the first thing you want to do when you're making the head is to make the ears. The reason we want to do these first is because we want them to stick up, so they need to set up and be a little bit hard when we attach them. Like with the feet or with the arms, we're going to roll this out, and then the same way we did the belly and the feet, we're going to add a little bit of pink to the center of each. Again, you could do this in any color. I've seen gold a lot, which really looks nice, but you can choose whatever color scheme you want for your bunny. Once you finish putting your ears together, you can decide how you want them to lay. For my bunny, I decided to do one sticking straight up and one flopping over because he is so itis-y from eating all this cake. I want him to look like he's kind of dozing off. Our next step is going to be creating the actual head, and like we did with the body, we're going to roll out a ball shape. Now, you could do any shape for the head that you want, but I'm going to make a little indent in the middle, almost like a peanut. Again, this is totally personal preference, but I just think this looks the cutest. I'm going to apply a little bit of water to the bottom of the head, and then I'm going to attach it to the toothpick that we added earlier. Again, I still have the styrofoam dummy behind to help support it. You could use anything that's the same height as your bunny to help support the head. Just note that whatever you have behind it, it may set into that a little, and the back of the head may have that shape. Once everything is attached, add a little bit more water and just position your head how you would like it to be. My bunny, I want him to be kind of looking up a little bit, so I'm just going to lean the head back slightly. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to roll out two more small balls of gum paste, and these are going to be for the front of the bunny's face, his little muzzle. So I'm just going to roll them into circles, and like we did with the arms and the legs, I'm going to roll out one tube, cut it in half, and then use each of those halves to create a ball. The reason I'm doing this is because we want them to be as even as possible. I'm going to add some water, and then I'm going to attach them to the bunny's face. Once I find a position that I'm happy with, I can make sure they're stuck down and centered. Then I can start working on the mouth. Again, this is just going to be a little triangle that goes below. Once I make sure the area is sticky with some more water, I'm going to attach the mouth. Now I'm just using a little Dresden tool here, but if you don't have that, you could simply use a toothpick. And I'm just going to make sure the mouth looks open because I'm going to be adding a tongue and a nose to this bunny's face. So first we're going to work on the nose. It's just going to be a little triangle. I'm going to attach it, but make sure it's 3D, not a flat triangle, because it has to fit between that little muzzle that we made for the bunny earlier. And I'm just going to, again, using my Dresden tool, poke it in. I'm going to make it into a little heart shape and then just round out the edges and create a little crease in the middle. The next thing I'm going to be doing is creating the bunny's tongue, and we do want to make sure that it's going to fit into his little mouth. So I'm just going to roll it nice and flat, and then I'm going to continue to cut it and check its size based on the mouth, holding it up to the mouth, and then bring it back down to the mat until I can cut it into a shape that works best. I'm going to create a little line down the middle of the bunny's tongue, like a real tongue would be. And then again, using the water, I'm just going to attach it into its mouth. My Dresden tool will help me position it, but if you don't have one, you can use a toothpick or a pin or any other clean tool that you may have on hand. One other thing that you can do to your bunny, it's totally up to you, but I think it's kind of important since he's going to be eating everything, is to create little teeth. So I'm just going to create some small white teeth that are going to look rather large on our bunny because bunnies do tend to have big teeth. It's one of the things that they're known for. And the same way that I attach the tongue, I'm going to attach these teeth under the muzzle of the bunny's mouth. It's really important here that you use a tool. If you do try to use your fingers, you may have a really difficult time, but using a small tool like a Dresden or a toothpick will be very, very helpful to you. Once I'm happy with the position of the teeth, my next step is going to be adding our ears. And like we did with everything else, we're going to apply some water to the base of the ears, and then we're going to stick them to the back of the head. Now, because the ears aren't as flat as some of the other things we attached, and they are a little bit heavier, and we do kind of want them to go against gravity and stand up straight, you're going to need something else to help you. In this case, I've just used a little extra foam, but if you don't have extra foam, you could simply use balled up plastic wrap or anything soft and pliable that you can kind of arrange to set those ears on. Again, if you want your ears both flopping, this shouldn't be a problem for you. I'm using edible art paint to paint my eyes on my bunny. Food coloring will work, but I find edible art paint, you only need one coat, so it's super wonderful for that. And I'm just going to paint on some little eyelashes. You could choose to paint open eyes, closed eyes, it's totally up to you. And again, if you've done gold in the ears or pads of the feet, I would totally recommend doing gold eyes as well to kind of keep with your theme. Now our bunny is totally complete. He's ready, looks all like he's eaten a ton of cake, but I just want to give him some rosy cheeks, so I'm just using a little bit of pink petal dust. If you're doing this at home without petal dust, diluting a little bit of food coloring in some alcohol will definitely help you. Using the chocolate batter that we've made a few times this week, I've baked up some 4-inch cakes. These bake for about 22 minutes at 350 degrees, and I just rotate them while I'm cooking them to make sure they're nice and even. I soak them with some simple syrup, and then I'm going to add my caramel sauce to a little bit of buttercream. This is the same salted caramel sauce we made last week. I'm just going to make this a salted caramel cake, so I want to create some salted caramel buttercream, and you can add it to taste, so the more you want, the more you can add. But just note, if you add an excessive amount, it will become a very loose buttercream that's difficult to work with. I'm going to attach my cake to my board using a little bit of buttercream, and the reason it's so off-centered is because we have to make sure we can fit our bunny. Once I apply an even layer of our buttercream, I'm going to add some salted caramel and some sea salt on top before applying my next layer. When I'm adding the buttercream to each layer, I'm just adding a large dollop and then using a small offset spatula. The size of offset spatula you use will depend on your cake. If you're using a larger cake, you should definitely be using a larger offset. You're going to push from the center outwards and then try to make one even round with your spatula to make sure it's nice and flat. If your buttercream's not flat, you may be able to push it down a little as you push on the next tier of your cake, but you do want to make it fairly even. When you're applying your caramel to the center of each cake after your buttercream's been evened out, you do want to make sure you don't go too close to the edges. If you do, some of that caramel will drip out and it can make your cake a little bit unstable. Now my cake's going to look a little larger at the top and smaller at the bottom, and that's just because of the angle of my camera, but I guarantee you all of these cakes are the exact same size. Once you finish adding all of your cakes, put a little bit of pressure, and then you want to seal off any areas where caramel might be coming out. Once you've sealed off all your areas, you can start to smooth out buttercream on top. I'm just using vanilla buttercream on the outside for my crumb coat. This coat doesn't matter as much because it is just there to collect all of your crumbs so that in your final coat of frosting, you don't have any crumbs that you don't want to see. I always start by applying to the top, smoothing it out as we did on our layers, and then taking a straight spatula and going around the sides. Once I'm fully covered, I take a bench scraper and run it along the sides while turning my turntable. I put that in the fridge and let it chill for about half an hour while I color my buttercream. I decided to use purple for this one, and then in the same way we covered our crumb coat, we're going to do our final coat. With the offset spatula, I'm just applying buttercream to any areas that have holes and then using our bench scraper to even everything out. I also decided to add some gold luster dust to this by flicking it on with some alcohol. I've piped on little yellow nests at the top, added my mini eggs, and my sprinkles from Sweeta Polita. Now I'm going to attach my bunny with just a little bit of buttercream to the board, and I'm going to add some eggs and cake around him so it really looks like he's been into this and he's eating and that's why he's asleep. You can really add anything if you want to add more sprinkles here. This would be a great opportunity, and you can also choose to cut out as little or as much cake as you like. I just want to get the idea that he's taken a bite of this cake, so I'm just going to take out a little bit, and I want to make sure those crumbs are showing and take all of those extra crumbs and put them aside because we're going to add some to our bunny so it really looks like he's been munching away. Although it went rather quickly, for the nest on the top, I simply used a yellow buttercream, and I just did a swirling motion around 2 times before adding my egg to the center and sprinkles on top. I hope you guys enjoyed this cake tutorial, and if you have any questions, please just ask me in the comments or let me know what you want to see next.